broadcast on public access television. Audio tapes and other relevant public records are available in the City Planning Office and may also be available on the city's website at www.nova.gov. The first order of business is zoning docket 8718.
Zoning docket 8718 is a request for a zoning change from an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district to an HUB1A historic urban neighborhood business district. The zoning change would apply to one corner property which is developed with a historic approximately 2,300 square foot commercial structure which has sat vacant and unoccupied since 2005. Historic records, including zoning maps and Sanborn maps, indicate that the site has been used for commercial purposes since as far back as 1929. There have been a series of land use requests submitted to the CPC and City Council in the last 8 years, which has incorporated either zoning changes or conditional use requests to reinstate a commercial use of this property. In 2015, the site was rezoned to a B1A neighborhood business district, but the rezoning was not carried forward to the new CZO in 2015. In 2016, the council brought forth a motion to the CPC to consider a zoning change at the site from an HURD2 district to an HUB1A district. This request was recommended for approval by the City Planning Commission, but was not taken up by the City Council within the deadline and died for lack of action. This is the same request, but is being made by the property owner. Though the requested zoning change is a spot zone, the staff finds it supportable through the historic non-conforming use policy, which allows certain spot zones in limited instances where they allow for low-impact, neighborhood-oriented commercial uses in structures that have historically been occupied by such uses. The staff believes that the proposal is consistent with the master plan and recommends approval of the request.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Carno. My address is 250 Barrett Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm here to represent Realtor Crew and Debbie Ajak. Any questions for me?
Any questions for the speaker? Do you have anything you want to add?
Just looking to make a commercial usage of the building, which obviously had been his whole life. Something that will help the community, so we're not looking to do any alcohol.
Good, thank you. Is there any other, I don't have any cards on this matter, so is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of zoning docket 8718? If not, is there any opposition to zoning docket 8718? If not, there's no need for rebuttal. Any other questions or comments from the commission, or is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, if there are no additional comments, I move for approval of zoning docket 8718 as per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown, motion by Commissioner Green. Any discussion? If not, we'll call the question and vote on the motion. All in favor? We don't have any machines, we'll just take hands. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all have a good day.
Before you read the next matter, so on the next matter, zoning docket 8818, we don't have I'm gonna have to recuse myself, and that will leave us without a quorum. We have 2 members who are gonna be coming in. One said he's on the way, and one said she will be here at 2. So rather than lose a quorum, I'm going to ask the proponents of 8818 if they wish to wait until the other 2 members of the commission get here, and then once I recuse myself, we still have a quorum. So 8818, Mr. Lyons, I presume?
We're in opposition.
You're in opposition? Okay. 8818?
We can wait.
We're going to wait. Okay, so we're going to defer. What kind of, do I need any special, anything to just take somebody out of order?
Yes, suspend the rules.
Yeah.
Vote to suspend the rules and then you can take that.
Can I vote on that, though, if I have to recuse myself on this matter?
Why don't we,
I mean, it's going to be at this hearing. We're just going to take it out of order.
I don't think we have, yeah, I don't think you can vote on it. I think we just
take the next one after that, and then.
Or we could vote on 8918 to take it ahead, and I can vote on that. Would that work?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we skip this one and then take it up, and the quorum that exists when they get here can take that one out of order.
You do, that's going to be in your hand. All right, we're going to skip 8818 for now. Zoning docket 8918.
Zoning docket 89. Zoning docket 8918 is a request for a conditional use to permit a standard restaurant in an H2B1 historic urban neighborhood business district, a Magazine Street use restriction overlay district, and a CPC character preservation corridor design overlay district. The municipal addresses are 1831 through 39 Magazine Street. The 3-story commercial building is undergoing a renovation to house multiple commercial tenants, including the subject standard restaurant, Union Ramen. The total floor area of the renovated building will be approximately 11,000 square feet. Union Ramen would operate in a 4,202 square foot tenant space on the first and second floors. Due to its proposed location in the Magazine Street use restriction overlay district, Union Ramen is required to receive approval through the conditional use process. A restaurant is an appropriate neighborhood serving commercial use. The staff does not believe that a standard restaurant at this location and its associated uses will negatively affect the surrounding mixed use or residential areas. The conditional use request is consistent with the applicable zoning district regulations, the master plan, and meets all use standards. Based on this, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 8918 subject to 7 provisos.
Thank you. The first card is Christine Bowe, but
Actually, she's going to defer her time.
great. Give us your name, and I don't think I have a card for you, so give us your name and address for the
My name
record.
is Jeffrey Capultos, and I am.
I do have that.
Okay, great.
1837 magazine?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
My name is Jeffrey Capultos. I am the owner of Union Ramen, and I'm also live in the neighborhood, and I will be the one occupying this location. We're trying to just bring this type of cuisine. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with ramen, but it's something that's very prevalent in some of the larger metropolitan cities around the United States. It's not so prevalent here in New Orleans, and we're just trying to bring this type of cuisine to this part of town. Our chef, he's worked under the likes of Emeril Lagasse, Stadium Kitchen in Las Vegas, as well as Susan Spicer. And leading up to this opening, we've gone through the process. We've held our neighborhood participation meeting. 240 invitees were sent to the neighbors. 11 people attended. Questions were answered. Concerns were answered. We also presented in front of the Lowell Garden District Association, and the board voted in favor of the restaurant, barring the signing of a good neighbor agreement, which we agreed to sign. I'm working very closely with the city planning officer, Emily Nicolette, has been very helpful, and our goal is to keep within the standards of what is necessary. You should also have formal letters of support from neighbors and business owners. With your approval, we'll be very excited to bring commerce back to this area. As you can see, this is what it used to look like before the renovation took place. And I don't know if there's a photo of what it looks like now, but it's a million times better, and I think a lot of the neighbors would agree with that. Any questions?
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, and you'll have time for rebuttal if there's any opposition.
Great.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of zoning docket 8918? I have two white cards before we get to the pink cards, so I don't know if they're in favor or in opposition. Bonnie Slaughter and Mary Lou Costa. Are you all A here, B in opposition? Or are you on a different zoning docket?
We're here for a different matter, but also we're very concerned about what's going to be there.
So if you want to speak to 8918, the restaurant we just heard about, then come on up to the microphone and give us your name. or not, it's your choice.
I'll leave my time over to Donald McGinnis,
Okay,
who's the adjacent property owner.
so I've Don McGinnis here. And are you, I'm sorry, are you Bonnie Slaughter or Mary Lou Costa?
Mary Lynn Costa.
Okay, great.
I'm Donald McGinnis. I filled out a green card.
I don't think it's made its way over, but go right ahead. You have 4 minutes. You've been seated some time.
Okay, I'm at 1111 St. Mary's Street, which is the building directly behind us, separated by a 3-foot common alley. I was once worked on this project as the architect. I'm no longer. That I wrote a letter to you all on July 16th, which should be in the file because I got it in for the deadline, expressing a lot of concerns about it. The main concern I have, and other neighbors have, is, and we did go to the Lower Garden District meeting and talk to the developers. The liquor license part of it goes with the building and not with the tenant. This is almost a 10,000 square foot building, and the tenant is on the left side, first and second floor. We're seeing the first floor plan. I count 56 seats in the restaurant and bar. The second floor, we've never seen a plan. But the problem is that the liquor license goes with the building and the owner, Christine Vo. Then if the restaurant leaves, goes under, loses the lease, whatever, the way I interpret it, the whole building can have a liquor license that's grandfathered in. And a new, they can put anything there in the whole building, like a bar, God knows what. So I have no problem with having a restaurant and serving liquor. There are 90 restaurants on Magazine. There's 10 restaurants within 300 feet of this building. Some of them have liquor licenses. Some of them don't. Some of them open and then have a liquor license, like the one directly across the street, Corretto, which this photograph was taken from. They opened and then got their liquor license. I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with it going with the building. Another thing is I have a problem with the fact that they admittedly have not applied for any permits from the state fire marshal, from the health department, from safety and permits, or the HDLC except the exterior work. All those permits should be in place before they get a conditional use. Other people do it that way. I've designed many restaurants. And another thing is the restaurant is built. The infrastructure of this restaurant on the interior is built. The plumbing is in, according to the floor plan that they've given us. The 3-compartment sink, the plumbing is in, the restroom plumbing, the grease trap, all the infrastructure. There's conduits, pipes all over the ceiling and under the concrete. And the walls, the demising walls are built, and the partition walls between the restaurant and the seating is built up to the underside of the ceiling structure. So this has all been built under the permit of the vanilla box. And we have no idea if it meets code because they haven't ever applied or submitted stamped drawings by architects and engineers to any of the agencies. So their response to this, well, we will follow code. Of course, they have to get a building permit. But they say they want to get, quote, their ducks in a row. This is the last duck you need to get in a row. The first ducks they need to get in a row are the building permit, safety and permits, health department right across the street, fire marshal right across the street in Baton Rouge. And they also want to have to put a hood in, which is a whole separate permit for the exhaust system, and that has to go with the fire marshal. So, as I say, the infrastructure is in. My problem is that, as I say, they're doing this out of order, and the liquor license goes with the building and not with the space. It's a 10,000 square foot building, and I don't even know how many square footage, less than half of it is to the restaurant. That's my problem with it. You know, I wish them luck, but I think they have to follow the same process that everybody else follows, and please apply for the permits before they start building it, and then ask for a liquor license. Yeah, that's basically it.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. McGinnis? So, Mr. McGinnis, you signed a green card that says in support, but I'm going to gather that your comments are in opposition.
Opposition. Well,
And that's fine. And but there was one more speaker in support. So before we get to the rest of the opposition, I want to finish the support.
okay.
And so that would lead to Christine Vo.
Good afternoon, I'm Christine Vo. Originally, I had hired Mr. McGinnis as the architect. He he had refused to draw the plans, although the city code and the state code have allowed the building to be used. And upon several attempts, we had ended the contract. I wrote him the letter to end it because he slammed his hands on the desk several times, saying he would not draw what the codes are allowed. And that's the reason why we ended up not being able to obtain his service. The master drawing was submitted to the city and it was approved. And that's why we went on and did what we did the petition and some of the major plumbing services. The building went through the entire new plumbing and we put all that in. Now that the restaurant is occupying, we're waiting, we're going through this process to get approval. So in the best of my knowledge, we're not doing anything that was wrong. And I would like to ask for your approval on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vo. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of zoning docket 8918? If not, we have one more card in opposition, Ramiro Diaz.
Hello, Ramiro Diaz, 1113 St. Mary, so next neighbor over from Tom Ligonus. In full disclosure, I'm also on the board of zoning adjustments. I just want to let you all know, and thank you for your service here. I'm totally in support of the restaurant and the idea of it, so sorry for the confusion there, but I'm very concerned about the trash and the storage of trash on the property and how, I just wanted to express that to you all, that it's not clear to me how they're going to maintain the level of service that they're going to and not have trash on the street every day. We have a big problem on Magazine Street in that stretch with lots of trash cans out there every day because the rest of the businesses can have trash whenever they have trash pickup. So there's just continuously trash on Magazine Street. So we're concerned that we're going to start having a similar condition on St. Mary. Not only trash storage, but also a place to clean the trash because given our drainage on our street, if it's just sprayed out on the street, we're going to end up with waste going into our drains or just sitting on the street. And then finally, the Good Neighbor Agreement is kind of used as a panacea a lot of times for these projects that have difficulties, and I'm a little bit concerned about how that is communicated to the neighborhood and whether the neighborhood group is on faith that it's going to get done and that we're going to appreciate it, but we're not part of that process as direct neighbors, so we have no idea what's going into that agreement. So it'd be nice to have that in place before the proposal actually gets passed. I would like to know what's in that agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to zoning docket 8918? If not, the proponents have time for rebuttal if you wish to add anything. So if not, the public hearing on this matter will be closed. I have a question or two for staff. Do the provisos address trash, or do they? I know they address noise abatement and a number of other things.
We do have our standard screening proviso in there, which requires the 7-foot high fence and latching gates for trash.
All right. And then my second question concerned an alcohol permit. That would be, how does this restaurant stand with respect to serving alcohol based on this application alone?
If their application is approved by City Council, the alcohol goes along with that by right.
Okay. So the public hearing is closed. Are there any other questions of the staff or any comments by any commissioner?
So will the alcohol permit be with the applicant or the actual building?
I believe the license goes with the applicant, but the standard restaurant use would include alcohol sale, and that would go with the building.
And would that that use only be for restaurant use, or could it then open up for music venues or anything else?
If approved, it would be for a standard restaurant use.
And then I had one more question. There was a comment in the opposition that things might be being taken out of order. But I presume that if this were to pass, all the other city departments still have to go through their procedures in terms of if the building permit, for example, and some of the other issues about was the electrical up to code, et cetera, et cetera. That would follow in due course.
Yeah. So yes, the main standard proviso is that no permits can be issued until the final sign-off of the conditional use plan. So implicit in that is that the conditional use has to be approved before the issuance, the review and issuance of building permit, and as part of the building permit process is fire marshal, et cetera.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
If there aren't any other questions, I'll move to approve for staff's recommendation. I believe that the provisos included in here will mitigate the ill effects of any.
Second. Commissioner Stewart seconds that motion. We have a motion on the floor and then seconded. Any other discussion? If not, the motion is for approval, subject to the provisos in the staff report. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes 6-0. No one, Commissioner Weidberg didn't know that he was so eagerly awaited, but now he's going to learn that his presence makes a quorum on the next matter. We'll go back to, I lost my list, zoning docket 8818. And then I'd also like to announce that unfortunately I have to recuse myself on 9018. So for the next two matters, 8818 and 9018, I'll be recused. There'll be 5 commissioners, and we'll call for docket 8818.
Zoning docket 8818.
Just 1 minute.
I think we need to vote. So Commissioner Stewart moves that we take zoning docket 8018 out of order. Commissioner Weidberg seconds. Is there any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Zoning docket 8818.
Zoning docket 8818 is a request for conditional use to permit the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages in the CBD1 core central business district. The municipal address is 301 to 309 St. Charles. The applicants are proposing a small market on the ground floor of a mixed-use building, which will total approximately 3,384 square feet in area with the retail sales of packaged alcohol. Plans submitted by the applicant show a floor plan with some grocery items, prepared foods, and alcohol display areas. Staff finds that the proposed use is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning district regulations, is consistent with the master plan, and the recommended provisos will minimize any potential adverse impacts. Therefore, staff recommends approval of zoning docket 08818, subject to 3 provisos.
All right. Opponents, state your name and your address, please.
Kurt Fallbacher, 1050 South Jeff Davis Parkway. I am the architect and developers for this project. I'll give you a little background on the building. This was built in 1851. It is a historic landmark. It was built by the Turro family, who also did Turro Infirmary and synagogue and many other buildings in the city. This was previously a bank on the first floor and offices above. When I got involved, it was vacant. I worked with the developers to convert the upper floors into 21 residential units. And then LL guys took over one of the ground floor lease spaces. We now have one lease space left to develop that the developers are going to be pursuing with this conditional use. As the staff report says, this is consistent with the master plan. There's several uses exist in close proximity. It will serve residents, workers, visitors, which is the goal of the CBD1. And with the conditional use approval, we'll have this building 100% occupied. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from commissioners? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Fallbacher. Brian Egana.
Good afternoon. Ryan again, president of Circular Consulting. I've been retained as one of the consultants working with the developer on this
State your
project.
address, Mr. again.
1515 Porter Street,
Thank you.
2215. I've been working with this applicant, many other cases since last fall, and I'm here in support of this application as well. And I'll be available to answer any other questions or rebuttal during the appropriate time.
Any questions from the commission? Thank you, Mr. Uganda. We will move on to the opposition. First up is Ms. Nancy Bradford.
I believe Ms. Bradford ceded her time. Chip Lyons also in opposition. We have her card indicating that she ceded her time. She can confirm that.
All right, Mr. Lyons, you'll have 4 minutes. Please, can you state your name and address for the record?
Thank you. And also, there should be one other speaker in opposition, Maggie Metz, who ceded her time as well.
Okay, you'll have 6 minutes.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chip Lyons, 201 St. Charles Avenue. I'm here to speak in opposition, representing the owners of Place St. Charles, which is the office building directly across the street. Place St. Charles is one of the premier office buildings in downtown New Orleans, almost 1 million square feet of office space. The building owner is also on the property directly behind this property, the Easy Park Garage. And Ms. Bradford represents the Louisiana Club, which is directly, if you're looking at that photo, directly to the left. We're in opposition to the application because the applicants have stated that it's a neighborhood market, but if you look at the floor plan, if you look at other comparable developments by the applicant, this is functionally a retail package liquor store. We feel it's going to, it doesn't help the neighborhood. Again, if you look at the floor plan, almost the majority of the space is going to be refrigerated cases. The applicant, the owner of the property is Mr. Aaron Mawani or an affiliated entity. Our understanding is that he's also the owner of the Vin Carre property at 900 Canal. We included some photos of that in our opposition. And again, if you look at that, what you see are just walls full of refrigerated display cases with some T-shirts and other small stuff interspersed. So functionally, it's a packaged liquor store. It's not really a market to serve that area. The owners of Place St. Charles have had, and the Louisiana Club have had a number of issues with the owners and developers of this property. The 21 residential units that they have referenced are literally functioning as an Airbnb hotel. Every single one of those apartment units in the upper floors is listed on the city's website as a short-term rental property. So we don't have direct information on who's there right now, but all we know is that every single unit is listed as a short-term rental. During the construction process for this building, construction and renovation process, Place St. Charles consistently had issues with construction debris, dumpsters on the sidewalk. As part of our package, there's a number of emails back and forth between Place St. Charles and the building developers. Since the building's been open and operating, the Louisiana Club on the left side has had issues with trash from the Airbnb going into their dumpsters. Place St. Charles has continued to have issues with dumpsters being out on the sidewalk, grease trap issues. On the side of Halal Guys they're directly adjacent to the entrance and exit to the Place St. Charles garage, as well as the bike parking area for Place St. Charles. So the garbage, the smell, the other issues present continuing problems. If you look at the city's one-stop app, the last time we looked, we saw either 4 or 5 open notices of violation for the property, including doing work without a permit. There are, in this immediate area, a number of other retail package liquor stores that are already there. There's a Brothers Food Mart on the opposite corner, Walgreens, CVS, and if you notice in the staff report, it lists a bunch of other ones. So from our perspective, this is not a permitted use. If it were a permitted use, we wouldn't be here. It's a conditional use. They have to show that this does not have an adverse effect on neighboring properties. They have to ensure the appropriateness of the use in a particular location, and that the use preserves the character and integrity of adjacent development. And unfortunately, based on the operating history of this property, they're not doing that with the permitted use, which is like presumably the Airbnb and halal guys, let alone with the packaged liquor store. So we just think that given the operating history of this particular property, putting in a packaged liquor store is just going to create more problems, and we don't believe that they've met the threshold that's required for you guys to approve a conditional use. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one quick question, because you talk about it doesn't meet the threshold of the bar. So just going to quote from the staff's report. It says, quote, "The proposal for a grocery store with the retail sales of packaged alcohol will not interfere with the goals of the CBD in both the comprehensive zoning ordinance and the master plan. Further, the proposed use with the addition of alcohol sales will work with the mixed-use character of the neighborhood, which already supports similar uses with the retail sales of packaged liquor and promote a more walkable environment. The staff finds that the proposed use meets the standards for approval in Article 4 of the comprehensive zoning ordinance and is consistent with the master plan. Further, it says allowing the sale of packaged alcoholic beverages is consistent with other commercial uses along the corridor, and if responsibly managed, the sale of alcohol beverages should not negatively impact the surrounding property. So with that said, you still don't feel it meets the...
Yeah, no, and look, we work with the staff a lot. I think they do good work, but we respectfully disagree with them on this particular application. If you look at the staff report, staff functionally has, every time one of these comes up, they give it the green light, and then either the city planning commission as the policy board or the city council as the elected policy board will sometimes put the brakes on some of these applications. So it may, if you go through and check the box, they may say, okay, well, yeah, they meet the setback, they meet the whatever zoning requirement they need to meet, but if you step back and look at it from a policy perspective, we've already got plenty of other outlets providing the same service within a 3 square block area, and from our perspective, given the operational history of this particular property, based on that and the fact that this need is already served, we don't think that they meet the conditional use threshold.
Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Brown?
I have a question for staff. Is there not a proviso or anything in here limiting the square footage dedicated to alcohol, the packaged liquor?
So we typically will include that so that requirement doesn't exist in the zoning ordinance. It does exist in the city code where a ABO is within a block of a school, park, that sort of thing, and so we'll include that proviso as a matter of course when that city code restriction is implemented. This isn't within, a block of a school or park or anything else like that. So, you as the commission could certainly recommend it if you think it's appropriate to sort of mitigate the impact of it, but it's not sort of a normal requirement that always applies.
Mr. Lyons, would limiting the space allow for packaged liquor sales inside the store so that it's more of a fresh market dedicated to healthy foods? Would that impact how you all feel about this at all, or is it mostly just the building operator and the short-term rentals?
Well, I think it's a good suggestion. Our concern is that how does that get enforced? Because if you say, okay, you need to limit the floor space, limit it to 10% of the floor space. The concern again is how does that get enforced given the history of issues we already had with this operator. We've been the asset manager plus St. Charles is almost in daily email contact with them, and we know that the city does what it can do, but the city's short-staffed, and we think that would be difficult to enforce.
One more question, if I may, for staff. Do we know the type of short-term rentals that are licensed in this building, and have they been affected by the LCD at all? Are these the temporary type that
So yes, they are all temporary short-term rentals, and they are commercial?
I think that's commercial.
Yes, I'm sorry, they are commercial short-term rentals. They are all in the portfolio of Sonder, which is a commercial short-term rental operator. They have a number of of short-term rentals throughout the CBD. And this one, I believe, their involvement on this site related to the financing falling through when it was originally, and Saunders stepped in as some gap financing for the property. I believe they have a 5-year lease on those units.
But as upper floors of a commercial property, these were affected by what the council did with the ICD, correct, or not?
These are not, because they are all currently licensed, and so they will be able to renew their licenses.
Any additional questions from the commission?
I have a question for the speaker. So would you be in support of this applicant if they did not serve alcohol?
Yeah, if they weren't serving alcohol, we wouldn't have a particular issue.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Bennett Davis? Mr. Davis, can you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Bennett Davis, 201 St. Charles Avenue. I'm a commercial real estate agent for Corporate Realty Inc. and the exclusive leasing representative for the 1 million square foot Class St. Charles mixed-use property located at 201 St. Charles Avenue. The owners of Class St. Charles, whom I represent, strongly oppose the St. Charles market. As a prime stakeholder in the CBD, located in the adjacent block, a packaged liquor store, a t-shirt shop, or limited groceries would be detrimental to the massive investments the owners of Class St. Charles have made in the area. It would not be in keeping with the types of businesses located on New Orleans' prime real estate street in St. Charles Avenue. There are already several convenience stores in the area selling packaged liquor, plus a wine shop and liquor store in operation located in Plaza St. Charles. There's a Brothers convenience store at the corner of Common and Rondelet, Mom's Mini Mart, at 327 St. Charles, a CVS that sells packaged liquor, Walgreens on both Royal Street and Canal Street, Rouse's on Verona, and many, many others. How many liquor outlets do we need? There are plenty. We don't need another, neither do we need a t-shirt shop and one more convenience store, though arguably those are not the issues that are before us. There is no compelling reason another liquor store is warranted. Demand is being met at every corner. Plaza St. Charles has had numerous documented issues with the owners of the building in question, from construction issues to the operation of halal guys, and the location of its dumpster and the mess that it created with little cooperation from the developer until after several complaints verbally and via email. It should also be noted that the subject building is a 21-unit Airbnb creating instability to our neighborhood. In sum, the owners of Plaza St. Charles, as do many other stakeholders in the immediate area, strive to not only preserve their investments, but actively improve the quality of the neighborhood for the benefit of all. This entirely unneeded liquor store will result in the opposite. New Orleans CBD is more than a tourist destination. It is foremost a professional place to work and an exciting place to live.
Mr. Davis, that is your time, so if you could
We should strive to preserve what is in the best interest of people who choose to work and live in the city, and in the CBD in particular, rather than cater to those wishing to profiteer off of our visitors to the detriment of our committed New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the speaker. You said that there's currently a store selling alcohol in the same building, packaged liquor?
In our building, 201 St. Charles Avenue.
So currently selling?
Yes. Wine, no wine or shop.
Just wine?
No, they have wine and liquor.
Thank you.
For the record, this will make 3 packaged liquor stores in a 2.5 block area.
Thank you. Any additional questions from the commission? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The proponents will now have 6 minutes for rebuttal.
First of all, it's not a conditional use for a liquor store. I heard that mentioned several times. It is a grocery store that will be selling packaged liquor. I wanted to point out, they brought up the Denny Carré store, which the developers also developed, and they include pictures in the package. And they're very nice. These are very nice showcases. It's upscale, and they only showed you the photographs of the beer coolers, but there's plenty of other things they sell in that store. I also wanted to mention that shooter who leases, the short-term rentals up there, they're dependent on reviews and emails. So they're gonna make sure that this building is spotless and taken care of, or they're gonna lose business. And the owners of the store know that. And so this will all work out. It'll be very nice. And, I understand the 201 St. Charles's opposition. There is competition with the store, it's competition with their food court, and I can understand all that. It is what it is. I believe that's all I have from my notes. I don't think there's any adverse effects for this.
Thank you, Mr. Farbach. Quick question, the Benco, right? Is that?
Yes.
Is that the establishment on Canal?
It is. It's
By
in
the
the
Crown Plaza?
Plaza.
Any questions from the commission?
I have a question. There was some concern about the operation of the building itself, the other units, and responsible property owners and good neighbors. Can you comment on how this would be an improvement to that, or address the concerns of
I'm not sure how far you're talking
the
about.
opponents have talked about the building itself being improperly or sloppily operated?
I don't see that. I ride by there all the time. So I'm not sure what they're talking about, other than when it was under construction. I know there was a lot of going back and forth because of dumpsters. So I don't know how you're gonna get a building without a dumpster. But that should have all been resolved by now. I do not believe they keep a dumpster on the side street anymore. If you look at most of the emails that were included in the package, it was issues with the dumpster.
Also, one of your, the neighbors across the street, Plaza St. Charles, that would provide a large market, I would think, for your store. Are you concerned at all that that large market might not actually, I mean, is there concern that that doesn't meet your model for business if those patrons are not needing this at all, or how does that?
I don't know if I could speak to that, because I'm not sure what the dynamics are in that area. I'm an architect, I know a little bit about everything, but I'm not an expert in nothing. So economically, I'm not sure how that plays out.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Farbach. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Agana, did you?
Yes.
It's about 4 minutes and 32 seconds remaining.
I'm not sure we got familiar, but this applicant is probably one of the largest minority developers here in town. They employ 500 full-time people. They own several casual restaurants. They have invested over $56 million on Canal Street alone. So when we're talking about economic development, here's a real opportunity. As the commission, as CPC staff mentioned, it's within the master plan, it's in the permitted use. And so I just wanted to make sure that the commissioners are aware of this development applicant, not just being paid as infraction of violation. In regards to if you're successful with this conditional use permit here and at the council, then it becomes a code violation or a city compliance issue. This is not before us today. So I urge you guys to support this, and I'll be available to answer any more questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Agana. Any questions from commissioners for Mr. Agana? Hearing none. The public hearing portion will now be deemed closed. The floor is open for comments, questions, or motion from commissioners.
Well, Mr. Chair, while I certainly would like to see the owners of Plaza St. Charles get along well with their neighbors across the street, the fact remains that I see no violations that, including the short-term rental usage, that make the neighbor across the street not responsive to city concerns. The very fact that there are so many, quote unquote, so many alcoholic beverage outlets is exactly the reason that I would say that I have no reason to deny another. I don't deny alcoholic beverage licenses along Magazine because there are a number of restaurants there, and I think that this is the same general principle. Let the market determine if there are too many. But the most important thing that I see is that the owner has abided by, in general, city requirements relative to the operation of their business. Matters of cleanliness or matters of code enforcement, and not what this body is asked to weigh. So with those comments in mind and maybe additional comments of the commissioners, I move for approval of zoning docket 8818 as recommended by staff.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Green. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Weberg. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Brown.
I guess I would ask to add a proviso for the square footage limitation.
I'm very open to that.
Okay. I'm hesitant to support this, but with that, I might. And the only reason I'm hesitant is because conditional uses are the flexible part of the code that allows us to look at things and look at it with scrutiny as to whether it provides a neighborhood need. And from what I'm hearing from the opposition, one of the biggest neighbors across the street doesn't see the need for it. So while I'm all for healthy options in groceries, if the neighborhood doesn't see the need for more liquor, then maybe we should consider adding proviso.
So I'll speak to that, Commissioner Brown, because I hear where you're coming from. I think the challenge I have is if the person that was bringing the entity, it's not a person, the entity that was bringing that concern had not of themselves decided to lease a space in their building solely for the distribution of liquor. It's a wine shop in their building. It feels a little disingenuous to say our version of this is okay, but their version is not. So if the Plaza St. Charles had said, we think there's enough existing liquor in the neighborhood, and therefore we had decided as an entity not to engage or indulge in that and lease any ground floor or any space towards selling liquor, it would feel a little less disingenuous. At this point, because they've allowed for liquor sales out of their building, it feels like, and I get where Commissioner Green is, it feels like this is an appropriate use for the area, so I'm inclined to approve it with the provisos of staff.
And I would agree with Commissioner Weberg. One of the opponents basically stated that they actually sell alcohol out of their building. However, beer sales or coolers are not allowed, and it seems that this application would actually fit in probably within the alcohol sales because it would be covering a need that's not necessarily being met at this time. So I'm going to also support the application for approval.
Any additional comments from the commission? I too am going to support the motion on the floor. I know Vin Correa was mentioned a couple times throughout the public hearing portion. I would just say I've passed that establishment several times. I've actually patronized it as well. For the record, it's one of the most immaculate establishments I've seen in the city, especially for Canal Street. So if that's any indication on how this facility is going to be run, I think that would be very positive. With that said, any further comments? If not, I will call the vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Green, Hughes, Weberg, Stewart, and Lund. All opposed? Commissioner Brown. With that, the motion passes, and Commissioner Steig has recused himself. Thank you very much. Also, Commissioner Steig, for the record, is recusing himself from the next zoning docket, which is zoning docket 9018.
Zoning docket 9018 is a request for a conditional use to permit an indoor amusement facility with standard restaurant, bar, and live entertainment secondary use components over 10,000 square feet in floor area
in an HUMU historic urban neighborhood mixed-use district and a CPC character preservation corridor design overlay district. The municipal address is 1152 Magazine Street. The existing site is located on Magazine Street near the Pontchartrain Expressway. The site is currently developed with a large clear-span brick warehouse that measures approximately 13,000 square feet in floor area. The applicants propose to convert the existing warehouse into a hybrid facility with constituent components. One entry would lead to a 1,325 square foot bar with a stage and seating capacity for 17 at the bar and 32 at tables. Another entry would lead to a 750 square foot standard restaurant with seating for 32. The plans indicate 3 rooms with stages in the rear of the facility. The HUMU district permits indoor amusement facilities and standard restaurants by right, but requires conditional use approval for bars and live entertainment secondary uses. The HUMU district also requires a conditional use for commercial developments located within existing structures that are greater than 10,000 square feet. The proposed hybrid facility would complement the existing mix of light industrial, warehouse, and commercial uses currently found in the area. The proposed commercial use will improve walkability and increase visitors on a relatively underused stretch of Magazine Street. The proposal would activate this portion of Magazine Street and help to connect the active part of the central business district to the active part of Magazine Street commercial corridor. In addition, the proposal meets all approval standards in Article 4 and is consistent with the master plan. Therefore, staff recommends approval of zoning docket 9018, subject to 13 provisos.
Thank you. Before we begin, we have 25 cards in support of the zoning docket, and that would unfortunately exceed the time allotted, so we would need a motion to suspend the rules. Would that be correct? All right, commissioners, we only have 2 agenda items following this particular docket, so what is your pleasure? Okay. Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Stewart to suspend the rules to allow all speakers to speak 2 minutes. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, so ordered. With that, Mr. Seth Dunlap.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Dunlap, can you state your name and address for the record?
Yeah. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry, I believe Seth Dunlap, reside at 1313 Constant Street, so a couple blocks away from the project. My wife, Rosa Dunlap, we're the owners of the property, and I believe she'll speaker number 2 and may cede her time to me, so we can just get through this quickly. So first of all, I want to thank the CPC staff for the work they did on the report and for the recommendation of approval, recognizing that this is a great reuse or adaptive reuse for a historic structure. I want to thank everybody, first of all, in the neighborhood that's come out to support or opposition. That's what this process is for, and we continue to engage neighbors on all levels. But I do want to acknowledge the great amount of support for this project, and I think it speaks to the block, the immediate neighbors, and the need for something to activate this corner on the corner of Magazine and Callio. So, quick story of the building. My wife and I, like I said, we live in the neighborhood. We love the neighborhood. We chose to raise our 2 kids 2 blocks away from the site, and we became familiar with the building, just navigating that corner with children, trying to get to the CBD or warehouse district. We invested a lot of money in this neighborhood, both personally and now on a commercial level, to try to really activate this corner. And so when we purchased the building about a year ago, we immediately went to the direct neighbors and started canvassing and expanding out. We had many conversations asking neighbors, what they would like to see on this corner after living here for many years in a dormant industrial block. The consistent responses were, 1, safety activation, a food, bar, restaurant scenario, and entertainment came up quite a few times. So we went through our process in searching tenants. We had a number of potential tenants that we entertained, some that we didn't entertain that continue to perpetuate the industrial use of the buildings, which we do first and foremost the neighbors were against. And so we went through the process, and in February of this year, we met the team, the Fallen Saint team. After doing our diligence on them and their concept, we thought it was very viable and creative use, reuse, or adaptive use of this historic structure that would add value to the neighborhood, value to the block, value to the neighborhood and the city overall. At that point, we went back to the neighbors and we canvassed, again, we started having conversations with the direct neighbors, local businesses, and expanding out even further. We've had over 100 conversations. We've had our MPP report. We presented 2 times at the CSA, and we've held a number of other meetings, dozens of meetings, either individually or small groups in neighbors' houses that have wanted more discussion on this topic. The Fallen Saint team is a very it's a high quality tenant with years and years of experience and a world-class talent that could bring something really interesting to this corner from an activation standpoint and something that the neighborhood would really enjoy, or the direct neighbors have expressed they'd really enjoy. So through that process and continuing to engage the neighbors, we've discussed many things of their concerns. A lot of the standard stuff comes up, safety, trash. But one of the, in continuing with those conversations, as you can see, we've not only gathered a great amount of support, we've gathered over 40 letters of support, and they continue to come in daily as this project gets more recognition. And we continue our dialogue with the neighbors as we move further on down the road with this. The thing that comes up, I think, most regularly, and I think is noted in one of your provisos in the staff recommendation, is obviously the parking. This being an urban, dense area, parking is always a topic of discussion. We can say from the very get-go in purchasing this building, we reached out to National World War II Museum immediately, just before we even had a concept or tenant, again, trying to get some feedback on what they would like to see to complement their campus. And we've been working with Bob Farnsworth there, and we do have a contract in place to fulfill the parking requirements immediately under the Pontchartrain Expressway, right next to the building site there. So I think with that, that's a quick overview, and looks like I had
right on time.
One question. You said do you still currently live 2 blocks away from the
we're some of the closest direct neighbors. We're some of the closest direct neighbors with kids. We're raising our kids in these blocks, in these areas around this business. I mean, this is a family business. We're not developers. We do this for preservations first. We for a number of properties in the neighborhood. We continue to invest in the neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, and quick introduction. So at that point, I'll introduce the Fallen Saint team, let them give you a little bit of overview on the concept and the economic impact.
Thank you. So Ms. Rose is seated at her time. Next up is Mr. Todd Perlmutter.
Yep, Todd Perlmutter.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
It's Todd Perlmutter, and I live in New York, moving down here in January. Thanks, Seth and Rosa. They're the best developers anyone could ask for. I just want to point that out. Myself and my partner, Jenny Willink, have a long history of success in theater, restaurants, bars, and music entertainment. And we're very, very excited to bring our unique brand of immersive music experience plus restaurant and bar to this location. So it's going to be, we're going to have the music experience in the back, and in the front is going to be a restaurant that's open all day, lunch, dinner, and late night food will be open from 11 to 1 a.m. We've got a great culinary director, Chef Lauren Raydell. She's known as the chef to the celebrity chefs. She does basically the sous chefing for chefs like Amanda Freitag. And she's a Cordon Bleu graduate, and she was the chef de cuisine at the Empire Diner, Corsena, and she's the culinary director for a couple of television shows. We're very, very excited to get a good opportunity to have her come here and do this. The kitchen hours are going to be from 11 to 1 a.m. And in addition to that, in the back, we're going to have a ticketed music experience. And the music experience is basically geared towards intimate, small group acoustic music performances. And so they're sound isolated, and our goal is that there's no electronic music, there's no computers, and there's no oonce dance music. It's basically about being close to the music, and that's why we're very site to be in a place with so many great musicians. To talk about the economic part, I'll introduce Jenny Wood.
Thank you. You guys keep stopping right on time. Ms. Jenny Willick, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jenny Willick. I live in New York City as well. Also, will be here starting in January. I'll just speak very quickly to the economic impact of this project. To mount this venture here, we'll be putting about $3.5 million into the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. Following that, once we're open, we anticipate bringing in about $10 million annually injected into the economy here. But I think that the thing that is most exciting to us is the creation of approximately 100 full and part-time jobs. And we've been working closely with some local agencies like Greater New Orleans Inc. to ensure that we are that we'll have very competitive wages and benefit packages and just be able to employ a lot of local talent with great steady work and a positive experience. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Can I ask
Question,
a
sorry.
question? So the venue, your partner said the back would be ticketed. Is there multiple entrance egress for the ticketed portion versus or is everything through?
Everything goes through the front.
Everything goes through the front? And then you talked about the hours on the restaurant. What's the hours on the performance, and how often do you feel or believe, as optimistically as the business plan would allow, how often is it going to be activated?
The ticketed portion would probably start with 8 shows a week.
Okay.
So 6 days a week, sort of a normal theater entertainment schedule. So 8 shows a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe 2 shows on Friday and Saturday. So we'd be operating a restaurant and bar approximately 90 hours a week, and the performance would be more like 16 to 20.
And those 16 to 20 would be captured inside of the 9 to 1 hours that the restaurant's open? Okay, thank you.
Question, Commissioner Lund?
I want to find out the job, about how many full-time, how many part-time, and what are those jobs?
It's hard to say right now, but there are sort of a split between food and beverage would probably be about 30 per day. The entertainment would probably be around 40. I think that we'll have a blend of full and part-time. I think the management and some of the key performers and key entertainers and key positions would be full-time. I think it would be to our benefit, and to our employees' benefit if it's flexible part-time, so they can maintain other employment and other gigs. And I've working with a lot of musicians over my career. I know that's how they like to roll.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Mike Sherman. Seated. Can you state your name?
Good afternoon. Rick Eisenstadt on behalf of the applicants of legal counsel. We've heard about how We've heard about how interesting and unique this project is. I just wanted to briefly highlight how it's also consistent with the master plan. It's in conformity with the CCO, and it meets the standards of approval for conditional use. First, the proposal is consistent with the mixed-use, medium-density, future land use designation of the master plan. By taking this abandoned warehouse that was a commercial laundry facility and bringing this project to it, we're going to increase foot traffic, we're going to increase visitors to the site. Now furthers the goals of the master plan to create neighborhood centers to enhance walkability and proximity to transit. Second, the proposal is compatible with the general purpose and intent of the historic urban mixed-use district it's in. How the immediate area is already comprised of light industrial, commercial, and residential uses. Next, this adaptive reuse of this vacant warehouse is the appropriate massing. We're not changing the footprint, and it actually establishes the appropriate transitions between high impact to medium impact and low impact development. It's going to activate this portion of Magazine Street to help connect the active part of CBD where you see the World Museum and kind of make that part of the commercial corridor. And finally, briefly, the entertainment experience we just talked about fits directly with the CCO's definition of live entertainment as a secondary use. We're talking about live acts, mostly musical and theatrical in nature, performed by multiple compensated artists with admission charge sometimes, but no fee for the restaurant or the front bar, and no fee required to be in the facility. And of course, the restaurant and bar will be open in a lot more duration and will be operating when the live entertainment is not being in use. So we feel that tracks the language precisely on the CCO's definition. So those are some quick things I wanted to highlight. Be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Thank you very much. Miles Gratterson.
We can move on. There are some neighbors that are here to speak, and I'd like to allow them to speak.
Thank you. Next up, and if I mispronounce your name, I sincerely apologize in advance. Embry Packard is the architect. Not sure if you're wishing to speak.
I can see my neighbors as well.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's okay. We had an idea. The direct neighbor is Lindsay Barnes, so she can go first.
Okay. Ms. Barnes. If you can state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Lindsay Barnes. I live at 1173 Magazine, so just across the street. I'm speaking on behalf of 3 of the closest residents, 3 of the residents on the blocks right here. James Brandel has rented at 1176 Magazine for the past 3 years, and Anthony Del Rosario has lived and owned 1174 Magazine for the past 17 years. I've owned 1173 and lived there since 2010. James and Anthony were not able to make it today, but we've met quite a bit and discussed this, and we're all in support of the proposed change. As residents on this block, light industrial neighbors such as car repair shops, the street cleaners like Empire Services, industrial laundry facilities have been a nightmare in terms of noise and trash, so we're very supportive of a different type of business moving onto this block. We hope it's the beginning of change on this block to expand the retail and restaurant and bar options up and down Magazine Street. As we've always felt that this block is a missed opportunity and stretch of a good street in our neighborhood. We've discussed our concerns about patrons from the bars spilling out onto the street and being noisy, about trash pickup, about parking issues, and we really feel that Seth Rosa and the Ball and Saint team have taken them into serious consideration and have a plan to make sure these are not issues. We really look forward to seeing a change on this block to something other than incredibly dirty and noisy industrial neighbors. I mentioned Empire Janitorial Services. They did operate right across the street from us. Now they operate directly next to us. We share a wall with them. They have a contract to clean the French Quarter. They start at 4 a.m. We all get woken up by them. They pressure wash these machines when they come home, so our block smells like urinal cakes, like the chemicals that are like coming down into the drain. It's so noisy. And when they moved in a year ago, there weren't any meetings or conditional permit discussions with any of us neighbors. There weren't any discussions at all. They just moved in, and it hasn't been a pleasant experience to any of us on the block. In contrast to that, Seth and Rita and the Ball and Saint team have gone out of their way to find out what concerns we have and how to address them. They've had us introduce them to other people we know so that we can talk about our concerns. They've held neighborhood meetings. They've invited us all to participate, and they really encourage us to talk about what could go wrong with this. We are aware that any business that opens up on one of these warehouses is going to add to parking and maybe some noise issues. But as long as that business is bringing something fun and positive with it, we feel those negatives are a sacrifice that has to be made. Anthony, James, and I chose to live facing Magazine Street for a reason. We know it's not the quietest place in the city, and we don't expect it to be. Anthony and I were on this block long before Barrel Proof were there, before French Truck was there, before Courtyard Brewery was there, and we had less parking and noise issues, but we would never give any of those new businesses up. It's been great. We now have debatably some of the best whiskey, coffee, and beer all on our little corner, and we hope that a great music venue could come along with that. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Susie Lamore.
1704 Britannia. That's just a few blocks from the subject property. I live a few blocks and work around the.
When you're riding your bike through there or when you're walking, it's kind of a transitional point between industrial and residential. So safety is of course a concern. So the more activity that's there, I think the better.
I would just like to punctuate the conversation today with something sort of big picture. From the research that I've done about the Fallen Saint and the immersive theater experience that they are promising, I think it's really consistent with this city's goals to attract cultural tourists and to expand the type of tourism and the type of tourist destinations that we have. And then I think the idea of providing employment and benefits for performance artists, which would include costume designers, set decorators, actors, singers, and musicians, is exactly aligned with the bigger picture of what we want tourism to look like here in the future.
Thank you very much. Next up, Michael Ortiz. And again, I apologize if I mispronounced.
That's right, my handwriting. Mike Bertel, 924 Melpomene Street. I'll be concise. I own 4 properties within 3 blocks of this location, and I think the more viable we can make the land down by the bridge, the more viable the whole neighborhood will become. And I'm in full support of it, and I hope you all see the way the staff recommends it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Allie Reese.
That's my time.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Steve Streifler.
EYK. No.
Thank you, Governor. Steve Striffler. Hi, I live at 1409 St. Mary Street. I obviously support the project. I think I don't have a whole lot to add, but I think this acoustic musical theater type venue really complements what we have in the neighborhood, and I think also brings something really innovative, not only to the neighborhood, but to the city as a whole. It's just kind of a really different way of doing live music in the city, and I think in some ways is long overdue, and I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Karen Reese.
Hi, I'm Karen Reese. I reside at 1409 St. Mary Street, and my husband and I have owned property and lived in the Lower Garden District since 2008. I served on the neighborhood board for nearly 7 years, and I invested a lot of time and money in the neighborhood. Everyone who is important to me in this world besides one son lives in this neighborhood, and we're all very active and very much a part of our neighborhood. We care very much about it. And I wholeheartedly and enthusiastically support this project. We need more economic and cultural viability in this section of our city. This is, after all, right at the bridge. It's at the interstate, and it can be, I believe it will be, our neighborhood will be safer and a lot more pleasant with more businesses at that area, in that area. My office is also 2 blocks from that area, so I'm very invested. I'm also excited about having a venue in our neighborhood with live music, as this is part of our city's culture and shouldn't be relegated to one section of the city. I look forward to walking to the Fallen Saint, taking my guests and my friends and people from out of town. I look forward to enjoying music that is part of the city's history. I also have full faith in Seth and Rosa Dunlap. They have given much to our neighborhood, have invested in several properties in our neighborhood that they've rehabilitated beautifully, and they're good, responsible citizens and neighbors. I hope you'll approve this today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, again, apologies if I mispronounce your name, Tara Lotz or Latis? Lopez. My apologies.
It's a hard one. My name is Tara Lopez. I reside at 1238 Annunciation Street, which is just a couple blocks away from the venue. I own a yoga studio in the Lower Garden District, and one of the main focuses of our studio is building community. I believe in the healing power of human expression and connection through activities that bring community together, and I think that the Fallen Saint is one of those projects. We all know that New Orleans has a lot of live music venues, but for members of the Lower Garden District, it requires a commute to reach them.
Our neighborhood is lacking one of the main things that our city is known for. In fact, in order to enjoy live music, we have 3 options. 1, pay for transport. 2, drive ourselves to the venue but not drink. Or 3, God forbid, drink and drive. So having something really close by would be really convenient. I believe the Fallen Saint is a perfect opportunity to create another space where people can enjoy the rich culture of the city without having to venture too far. And a live music venue would make the neighborhood safer, more vibrant, and more complete. I fully support this project and hope you will approve it.
Thank you very much. Laura Jofrion.
I'd like to compliment you on the pronunciation of my last name. You did a great job. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your time. My name is Laura Jofrion, and I live 5 blocks away from 1152 Magazine on Melpomene and Coliseum. And I've been an active participant in the neighborhood discussion around this project. I'm thrilled to hear that the staff report recommends approval, and I agree with the great points they have made around the positive impact this initiative will have on improving this block. This use activates a blighted and vacant industrial block. The front of the building will hold a cafe and bar that is open for a majority of their business hours. This cafe will offer respite for tourists walking up Magazine Street from the CBD. With activity happening on the block, the project also provides safety and walkability. Additionally, the project provides an immersive cultural entertainment option that will offer a unique shift in New Orleans entertainment. It is a way to rethink live music in this town. It is a concept that justifies investment in a historic building and offers musicians, artists, and local actors an opportunity for a professional career rather than just a one-night gig. With all of this said, I would like to ask for your approval on this project, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Jeffrey Meeker, followed by Steve Pike.
Good afternoon, my name is Jeffrey Meeker. I own and operate French Truck Coffee at 1200 Magazine Street. I'm going to echo a couple of things and make it short. This strip of Magazine is a huge problem for everybody that lives there and everybody whose business is there, because it is basically industrial, number one. Number two, it's dangerous at night. Since I opened my business originally, we had a large problem with theft and crime. We broke it into 3 separate times. One was an armed robbery, and that was fairly recent. And part of that I attribute to the fact that this is not activated. This has had a lot of starts and stops, and since Seth and Rosa have taken on the project, it's been nothing but forward progress, and I would ask you to support that so that progress can continue for the neighbors and for the businesses that occupy this part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Pike, followed by Cassandra Corrales.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I live at 56. My name is Steve Pike. I live at 1566 North Georgian Mile. I used to live on Terpsichore, and I've known the area for some years. This particular site, I think, is not safe at night. It's a blighted area. It's a blighted vacant site, and I believe with the granting of this proposed project, it will improve safety in the area. It will provide a unique cultural entertainment opportunity that will restore a historic building. And importantly for musicians, it will offer a basis for full-time work and not a one-off gig. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cassandra Corrales, followed by Bailey Rootbacher.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Corrales, and I live here in New Orleans. I live in the Bywater, not in the Lower Garden, but when I first moved here, I lived in the Lower Garden, and that is one thing that area is lacking. Is
Just state your address for the record.
Oh, my address, 4132 North Rampart Street. Anywho, my bottom line was I was so fortunate enough to perform in the workshop that was the Fallen Saint, and as a performer and actress and dancer, in New Orleans specifically, there isn't too many things I can be in as a full-time performer, and this would be something that I could be in, and the opportunity would be so grand, and the team, I feel, would do this culture and history justice. with what I've seen so far. So on behalf of all the performers, this would be an exciting opportunity for something that New Orleans needs. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you. Haley Brubacher,
I
followed.
see my time in agreement.
Thank you. In support, not wishing to speak. Next, Christine Vogt.
Hi, my name is Christine, 1837 magazine. By coincidence, I'm here and saw this on the docket, and I am very supportive of this project. I've been around that area for many years and always saw graffitis and little kids board skating on the side. And last week I saw a whole brand new painted sign. I was so delighted. So congratulations to them that they have all the support from the neighbors, and I hope you grant them the approval.
I'm taking some of our time. My name is Kat Capoltos. My husband and I are here. We actually live down the street, 2 blocks away from here at 1356 Magazine Street, and we're raising our 2 children in the neighborhood as well, and we're here in support of them. I personally experienced one of her productions in New York, actually, so I can attest to the art and the theater and the culture that they want to bring here for the artists and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beverly House, followed by Emily Fields.
Good afternoon. My name is Beverly House. I own the building at 1245 Constant Street, which is just about 2.5 blocks from this. I am support of this project for a couple reasons. At my property, we're actually working on a restaurant development project. I'm working with the chefs at Coquette to try to bring another eating establishment into the Lower Garden District for the locals. I'm excited to see this project have an opportunity to not only bring something in for tourism and guests to our city, but also to provide something for the locals in the neighborhood as well. So there's going to be a restaurant and bar, so people can come at lunchtime or they can come in here after work, and I think that's great. I also have a guest house in the Bywater, and I know one of the concerns is parking in this area. I think that Seth and Rosa have done a lot of good research to try to figure out solutions to those concerns. The reason I bring that up is that I would say 85% of my guests coming in to the city to visit New Orleans are not bringing a car. So yes, there will be people getting dropped off at this venue, but I think some of the parking concerns are not going to be as great as we may be worried about them being. I'm not sure how many people have knowledge of or been to an immersive experience like this. I've been fortunate enough to go to a show in New York. It's called Sleep No More, and it is one of the most memorable entertainment experiences I've ever had. Everyone who's going to New York, I tell them they should go do that. And I don't know the exact concept of how similar this will be to that, but I will say that I met people at that show at the bar beforehand that had been to that show like 5 times. Because every time you go to the experience, you have a different experience. So I think this is really something special and unique that we're going to get to see. And I think that's going to be really cool because this show will be able to grow as they kind of form their concept, and we're celebrating with the jazz of our city. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to see my time. I'm Emily Fields.
Emily Fields, okay, in support, not wishing to speak. Also looks like Becca Hurst, in support, not wishing to speak.
That's correct.
Scott James, and again, if there's anybody that wants to waive, I'm happy to read your name in support into the record.
My name is Scott James. I'm at 1328 Whiskey Street. I just want to let everybody know that I support this idea of a restaurant acoustical music venue on the site adjacent to the freeway. It's a very difficult site. I've been involved in urban planning, architecture, and real estate. I think it would definitely add to the uniqueness of the city and to our own Lower Garden neighborhood. I can't think of a better situation to have than the owners living a block and a half away, and also to have them a personal and a financial interest in a successful outcome. I think as long as parking and security requirements are successfully addressed and they have the local support of immediate neighbors that are affected, I can't think of any reason why this dynamic development can add value to the area, and I would urge you to support the project.
Thank you very much. Margaret Ski, and again, apologies if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, I'm Margaret Shea. I own a business in the Lower Garden District, and,
Just state your address for the record.
oh, sorry, 1933 Sophie Wright Place.
Thank you.
And I am in full support of this business in the neighborhood. It'll do nothing but bring value to what's already going on in that neighborhood. Believe a lot in the project and the creativity of the project and just everything it's about in regard to New Orleans and music and the cultural aspect, and just fully support this happening.
Thank you very much. I will now move on to white cards, providing information only. First up, Ryan Crope, or Cropoy. My apologies.
Hi, thanks everybody for hearing us out. It's Ryan Kropog. I live at 1326 St. Andrew Street. I am the current president of the Lower Garden District Association, which is historically known as the Coliseum Square Association. So this has been an interesting discussion with both privately that I've had with a number of people, as well as at our last two board meetings. So there are a lot of people in the neighborhood, throughout the neighborhood and nearby, that are opposed to this, because they feel there are concerns about parking and largely the legacy of that live entertainment conditional use. Conversely, there are a lot of people that support this both throughout the neighborhood and in the nearby area, as they see it as something that will breathe life into a blighted building, into a quiet corner. And you know, there's a lot of people that go to the World War II Museum. When you look across the expressway, it's not a very inviting sight, so maybe this nudges them into our neighborhood to go to other bars and restaurants. So our official board stance, after a lot of back and forth, is that we would support the conditional use requests if the owners agree to let the conditional use for live entertainment lapse if the current tenant leaves or if they sell the building. And I thought this was a good compromise based upon all the different opinions we've gotten, where a number of people are opposed to this and have been opposed to live music expansion in our neighborhood. It is kind of an interesting space where you have this Magazine Street corridor and then a lot of residents. And then also, too, the support of it is supporting these owners, this tenant, at this location. Whereas conversely, if for whatever reason this business is no longer there, they wouldn't necessarily support an electronic dance music show that's there with a bunch of college kids coming in. So that's where we stand. I've spoken to the owners about this. That'll be a work in progress, but like I said, I thought that was a good compromise that brought in a lot of different voices. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask staff a
Yeah,
question?
Commissioner Weber.
So that concept, it's a 6-month lapse, right? What would cause that? What they just proposed, that removal of the conditional use?
So I think what's happening is that there's a conditional use and there's a non-conforming use. Non-conforming use, if it shuts down for 6 months, it goes away. A conditional use exists as long as the ordinance exists. So this could operate, shut down for 5 years, and someone else could come back and use the same ordinance. And so, you know, the instrument here would be a rescission down the line, and for whatever reason, the city council ultimately determines that the conditional use ordinance should no longer be in place.
Thank you.
Can I ask, it sounds like what they're proposing is some sort of a neighborhood agreement, where there would be a private agreement between the owner and the applicant, that the city would not be a party to and would not be enforcing.
And yeah, and so that's my sense too. And so it becomes terribly unenforceable if unforeseen things happen to burden a current owner. I mean, if the ordinance passes, what you said is my understanding too, that there can be best intentions, but they're unenforceable by this body. That it would have to happen outside of planning and this passage. So thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to the opposition. First up, David Halpern.
David Halpern, 26 Swan Street. After all this conversation, I sort of feel like the Grinch. I'm going to keep going. Okay. Anyway, basically, I represent Willie and Elizabeth Monahan, who live. They are the most immediate neighbor. A lot of folks live 2 blocks, 4 blocks, 12 blocks, 20 blocks, 40 blocks. My client lives immediately adjacent to this property. And the Monahans are concerned about it. Mr. Monahan is an artist, and he uses his gallery not only to work the paint, but also for for shows and all that kind of stuff. And they also use their building to host nonprofit board meetings. So what they're concerned as an immediate neighbor is that when this venue comes in, there could, while they're going to talk about soundproofing, but there's no detail on soundproofing. And so they talk about acoustical, but perhaps the crowd likes more than acoustical. Maybe they like that boom, 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 C-weighted music. Well, we live, or Mr. Monahan's property is immediately adjacent to that, and so he's going to hear that all day and all night long, or probably all night long, because I don't think it's going to. What they talk about is really talking about during the day. I mean, the entertainment part is going to be at nighttime. But the other problem is this: is we have a fundamental problem with the application itself. I think it's technically deficient because the way they applied for it is for a bar with a live entertainment facility as a secondary use. Well, if you look at section, this is not a late submittal, this was in the packet, A101, the drawings, you'll see that about the property's about 12,000 square feet, plus or minus. So I'm just going to use round numbers. But about 8,500 square feet of this location is going to be for live entertainment. That is not a secondary use. That is clearly the primary use. So it doesn't fit within the zoning code for all practical purposes. Ed Horan, who is the zoning administrator, had provided an opinion.
He can get his 2 minutes from Jack Houston.
I'm sorry, who?
Jack Houston.
Okay, you have 2 additional.
Thank you. Provided an opinion that said, well, I really think it might be an indoor amusement facility. Well, the problem with that is if it's an indoor amusement facility, it simply can't have live entertainment. So unfortunately, it's close to this and close to this, but it doesn't meet the zoning code. And if in fact, this is a conditional use process. So there are a lot of neighbors that are in support of it, but there's also a lot of neighbors, and in particular my client, who is very concerned about the density of the traffic and those kind of problems. This is not a knock against the developers, okay? The Dunlops are lovely people. I think they're super well intended. I can tell I've met them. I happen to like them, so this makes it even harder. The problem is, once they sign this contract, they're going to sign a 10-year lease. Once they sign that 10-year lease, they no longer have the right to control the property. They've ceded that to somebody else. So all of the conversations that we've had with them as neighbors, and the fact that their children and them live within 2 blocks, may or may not be relevant because for 10 years, they can't do anything about the property because the property will be leased to someone else whose business model will be dependent upon what it takes to get people to show up. And if what it takes to get people to show up to that neighborhood is boom, 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 or loud music, or things that are outside of the typical noise parameters that make for a good living, then we're going to have a problem, and we're going to be stuck with this problem. Not Seth and Rosa, like I said, who are very well-intended people. So, that's it.
I have a question.
Commissioner Lund.
What is their address?
Their address is, they're on Arado Street. Their address is 1019 Arado Street. That's their property, but they're there because Mr. Monahan uses it as his art gallery. He's there probably 12, 16 hours a day.
So are they Steam Power LLC?
Steam Power LLC.
I'm looking at 1019 Arado on them.
There may very well be an entity that owns that property.
They lease it?
No, they own it.
No, they own it and they work there. He actually lives, I think, on Robert Street. Not really exactly there, but maybe 10 or 12.
But they don't live there. It's a studio.
Right, exactly. That is not where they live. So it's not going to keep them up at night if they're trying to go to sleep. I'm not trying to suggest that. What I'm suggesting is the time they can work.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Brown.
I have a question for staff. Mr. Halpin mentioned the problems with the application itself. Can you address those concerns about the square footage not quite meeting the secondary use and the amusement facility?
Yeah, so the Department of Safety and Permits said that this is an indoor amusement facility, and so that's a permitted use in the district. And there are additive elements which require conditional use approval. And so one is the restaurant component in the front, Number two is the live entertainment secondary to the restaurant. So in the restaurant bar area, there's a small stage that is secondary to the restaurant, and then the bar is also a conditional use. And so while what's called an indoor amusement facility, and that's bowling alleys and these sort of participatory types of entertainment things, and safety and permits is slotted this in that category, that's permitted by right. This application essentially allows that plus the restaurant plus the bar and the ability to sort of bring drinks into the indoor amusement facility component.
So that's why the square footage of the stage itself is not an issue here? Is that what you're saying?
Right, I mean, I think the concern articulated here is that if you look at the thing overall, the entertainment part is much larger than the restaurant and bar part, but that big entertainment part is considered an indoor amusement facility. It's not considered live entertainment secondary use. What is live entertainment secondary use is this small stage that's in the restaurant part of the larger development. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes.
Thank you. Any additional questions? If not, moving on. First name begins with an M. Musino.
Could you take Ms. Marquet next?
yeah.
Because she's
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marta now, and I've recently purchased, my husband and I recently purchased 1110 Dorado, unit number 3, which is the entire top floor of, I don't know, so I suppose you'd say it's catty corner to the Fallen Saint Idea warehouse. And we closed on that particular piece of property on June 22nd this year, and we were made aware about 10 days, 2 weeks afterward that this would be a proposed idea for the neighborhood. So I can say that I'm an 18-year resident of New Orleans. We've raised our child here, and we recently purchased this property because we're moving from uptown. We want to be in sort of the middle of what's going on downtown, and we want to start a new sort of a life with child going away to college. So anyway, we were not made aware by our real estate agent. We were not made aware by the people who were selling us this, and whether they are, whether they're in the know about this or not, I don't know, and I don't find fault, but I would have liked to have known that there might be a venue going in and around the corner where, in fact, I mean, if you're doing 2 shows a night on Friday and Saturday, I believe, and you're open, 6, 7 days a week, there's no way that the parking isn't going to be impacted on Arado Street. I mean, if you're coming uptown and you're going to be dropped off here, you're going to take a right on Arado, or maybe 2 streets up on Melpomene, because otherwise you're going to be taking a left. So that is concerning to me. Any kind of nightclub or venue situation where you're getting out at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, you've been drinking, that spill over in the street, that concerns my husband and I in terms of safety. My husband and I did go to the board meeting of the Lower Garden District. We did find out that they were going to have 3 security guards. I don't know. We've got a bar in front of us. We have the beer garden down the street, and this creates another opportunity for a bar and entertainment establishment. So
thank you.
I'm in opposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Boyd and Bonnie Boyd is seated for time.
John Boyd. I live at 1309 Felicity Street. I've lived in the Lower Garden District on 2 occasions. One's from 1959 to 1968, at which point, due to the death of my mother, my father had to drop out of college and go to night school. He always told me, work hard, get an education, move out of this damn neighborhood, because it was so horrible. By the time by 1968, there were 65 bars in the neighborhood. 65 bars, and as a child I witnessed 3 street shootings. Just coming home from school, somebody outside had a beat, had a shooting. So at the age of 10, I saw street shootings. We moved further uptown. Dad got his degree. I was district. bought one of those old homes and restored it. That has been for 21 years. Now I'm concerned, and I'm in the tourism industry. And when my neighbors approached me and said, John, what is this expansion, the convention center going to do? What about these outside venues? What about, you know, the amphitheater? What's going to happen? I assured them, I said, well, we got a buffer. We got Magazine Street. Shops, restaurants, residential. Well, now it's going to become a tourism venue. And not only that, I was mentioned in the Uptown Courier, so I had phone calls from friends of mine that live in the Marigny that have sold their homes 4 blocks from Frenchman Street because it became unbearable to live there. They moved further up Esplanade or they've moved into condos. I don't want to be put in that situation. It's a nice neighborhood. Airbnb has already pushed out all the renters. It's now gotten so tragic that on a Saturday night, 17 people stopped me, all in a group, coming from the streetcar. Hey, where's Magazine Street? I want to go to the Half Moon. Fine. It's only going to compound. They've assured us their project has morphed as we've had meetings. Attempting to be a peacemaker, when the parking issue was brought up, I said, hey, listen, you all own that warehouse next to it. Why don't you do the off-street parking there? No. Set up a red flag, told me they're going to take that development and they're going to expand to the next warehouse. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be people wandering the streets and drunkards and that sort of thing. They assured us, well, we're going to have security. We all know private security company can't keep the crowds moving on. They can only maintain within the facility. Thank you for your time.
Jane? Help me out.
I'm Jane Murdoch. Hello. I have grown up in the Lower Garden District and lived in the Lower Garden for 40 years. I raised my son there. I've renovated maybe 16 historic buildings in that neighborhood and had 3 buildings, small businesses on Lower Magazine. I hate to disappoint and go against neighbors, but I think that this proposal is so huge for our neighborhood. I used to have the bar right across the street, and I lived right across from this, Hillbridge Lounge. For 10 years, I have watched traffic on the street. This will create a tsunami of traffic. This will bottleneck all the way around Calliope, up the interstate, down the interstate. All it takes is 1 bus, 6 taxis. And they're talking, this is not staggered parking, this is event stuff. There's not a single location on Magazine Street that is going to have this kind of intensity of pickup and drop off all evening long, except Audubon Zoo, and it has a huge parking lot. The possibility of this creating an incredible cluster every single evening. It's right next to the interstate. And our neighborhood is, I'm an activist and a preservationist. I care about my buildings. It is so deteriorated down there. Underneath the underpass of where the bridge passes, only one side of that street has a sidewalk. If you look at that sidewalk, on the other side of the street, the sidewalks are in terrible disrepair. Rado Street is still a cobblestone street. I mean, we literally cannot handle any more people. And this is like $250 a show, 300 in the restaurant, 200 employees. Where are they all going to park? All over our neighborhood. And so that pushes a ton of people and strangers, we have a residential neighborhood for a reason, to protect, the tourists from us and to protect us from the tourists. And I take this really, I've had a liquor business, but I also grew up in this neighborhood. I myself was kidnapped 2 blocks from the interstate and had to fight my way out of a car with 2 drunk men because there are so many liquor outlets and people ride around. And every time you have liquor right next to an interstate, you have violence, you have drunkards, you have sex trafficking, you have all that stuff. I mean, it is really serious before we start handing out these, nobody wants to build affordable housing, but everybody wants a liquor license.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mary Lynn Costa?
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Lynn Costa. I live at 1420 Utah Street. I've lived there for the last 47 years. In 1971, my husband and I came to this neighborhood just a short time after John left. And I must say, yes, there were indeed quite a few bars. There were 5 on my corner, 3 of them known for prostitution, and 2 of them known for being the drug, outlet into the city. So I took blind faith right out of college and came into this neighborhood. I'm here today to register my concern and opposition to any conditional zoning change that would allow a business adjacent to a residential neighborhood in the Lower Garden District with the right to play live music, stay open until all hours of the morning, 7 days a week. I see ambiguity in the interpretation of the CZO, and I believe that this matter needs greater consideration. I do not think I'm wrong when I say such a venue should not be allowed. Like I say, I've been a neighbor for 47 years. I do not think I was wrong when my husband and I established the Coliseum Square Association and placed the neighborhood on the National Register in 1972. We've both served on the board as officers and as just general members. We purchased not only our house, we purchased the burned out lot next to us, and that's now our garden. And then when there was a shootout between the girls and the pimps on the balcony next door, we purchased that place, and it's now, and we returned it to just a two-unit building, and it remains that today. I do not think I was wrong when I actively searched out with others to join us as homeowners to stop the proposed Mississippi River Bridge at Felicity Street that would have destroyed a broad swath of an area from the river into Central City. I do not think I was wrong when I worked with the city in passing bond issues and received the federal grants to renovate Coliseum Square in 1974. I do not think I was wrong in 1976 when, as the Coliseum Square Association, we defeated the building of two 30-story towers at St. Charles and Felicity that would place most of the neighborhood in the shadow.
Thank you, ma'am. That is your time. And finally, Bonnie Slaughter.
My name is Bonnie Slaughter. I live at 1226 Camp Street. I'm just in the next block over. I have served on the board of Coliseum Square many times, and I have served as vice president of Coliseum Square Association. I live there with my husband, who's a physician. I'm a nurse. I have two children. One is 8, the other is 14. I'm really concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about safety. I'm concerned about noise levels, this is my home. I bought this house. It was the worst house on the block, and I've sunk over $1 million in restoring it. And this is my home. And I feel like I am going to be backing up into a new fat city. And once they have sucked whatever profit they can make out of Magazine Street, then they'll just abandon it. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now return to the proponents for rebuttal. Mr. Dunlap.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you, staff, first of all, for your recommendation and for the City Planning Commission here for considering this. I want to thank everybody that came out today supporting and against for the conversation and for expressing their position on the matter. With that, I would just say again, thanks for the effort, the work. We would like to continue this process and continue off the recommendation for approval from the staff. And at this point, I think everyone has kind of said their piece, and we feel comfortable with the conversations that we had today. So thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. With that, would any other proponents that want to speak? If not, the public hearing portion will be closed. The floor is now open. Commissioners, questions, comments, or motion?
I have a question.
Commissioner Lund.
So the property next door, you also own 1150?
We own 1150, not 1160, which is, I believe, who they're referring to. So that's not a parking lot. That's our control. We have a letter of support from that property owner as well.
1160.
1160.
On 1150, have you had plans for that?
Well, we initially bought that building first. We had some personal plans as far as activating it, opening to the community for like antiques and art. It's a family business, and my father-in-law was getting ready to retire, so we had a lot of supply. And originally, when we purchased that building, we stood outside and said, if we could put a bunch of money in
this building and something heavy industrial comes back in and that shoots our business plan down. So as of right now, you know, if this doesn't work, the whole corner kind of doesn't work, and so we would have to think about other options. But long term, we have plans to again make it open to the community with some sort of, and it's not part of the project. It's a whole different address.
Right, so, okay.
Yeah. So not to get too much into, yes, we own corner 1150, which kind of arrived us at.
Okay. So that's my grandfather's store. So
Oh,
I
are you a
lived above it.
Oh, I see.
I know how dangerous it was.
Well, yeah, and we were thrilled to be able to acquire it to begin with, and really kind of, you know, gave us this energy and this emotion to help bring the whole corner around. So it's great to hear the district of building of 11 chat house sometime, maybe off the record, but.
Yeah. But I just have a concern, you know, of parking, and I'll just ask about that.
Sure.
I have a question for staff. From one of the speakers, we heard a concern about necessarily the applicant being engaged in a lease, like a 10-year lease, so they won't be the responsible parties. But can staff kind of elaborate on what happens since the applicant is actually applying for this application, and the applicant, as far as provisos, with their responsibilities being making sure that the security plan is in place, and also submitting the noise abatement plan.
Yeah, so regardless of who's operating it, it has to operate within those requirements. And so the developer, the tenant, whoever is managing the business has to, you know, provide a security and operations plan, provide all these other plans that are required, safety and permits. Those are all requirements of the zoning ordinance. And so that's the case whether the, you know, under the current owner and whoever ends up operating the facility, and it's also the case under for any other operator in the future.
Any additional questions or comments from the commission?
Just like for the staff to address, so you said that you anticipate that the conditional use would result in a slight increase in traffic. Could you talk a little more about that? Why only a slight increase given the square footage?
So I think, you know, I think there would certainly be an increase in traffic. I think we would expect that a lot of that is going to come off of the expressway, and so it's going to be within this block and then cycle out back to the expressway. We also would anticipate that a lot of more, you know, closer visitors are going to walk, possibly bike, take Uber, and so, you know, certainly there will be vehicles there, but the parking that would be provided would be under the expressway, and so a lot of the traffic that you're going to get is going to be closer to the expressway and filter less into the neighborhood.
So there is parking under the expressway, public parking?
Yeah, so there's a parking requirement. It's not a huge requirement. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 spaces. And that has to be provided within 300 feet. And so at a legal location within 300 feet, the easiest place of doing that, and I believe you all have alluded to this, is under the expressway where there's already a surface parking lot.
8 is what's required.
It's so it needs to formally be determined by the Department of Safety and Permits. We've estimated it in the 8 to 11 spot range.
Mr. Dunlap, you've already secured parking via the sign agreement that you have for those parking lots.
Yeah, we secured the parking with National World War II Museum and Bob Farnsworth, who said he's happy to have a discussion with City Planning if he wants to, but we are going to be able to fulfill what is required for sure, and then within 300 feet. And then, you know, the team and us all have, you know, plans on just helping kind of to encourage non-drivable attendees to it.
Do you know how many parking spots that will include on the bridge? How many parking spots?
Right now, we have a commitment for the max that they're asking to fulfill, which is 11. We could go up or down on that per Bob with that. But the ability is there to fulfill within 300
are you able to meet all the provisos currently?
Yeah, we have reviewed the provisos and think that we'll get, meet all of those obligations.
Yeah, a lot of those were anticipated with conversations as well with the neighborhood, so it's something we're already planning on.
Any additional questions or comments from the commission? Not, I will entertain a motion.
If not, Mr. Chair, I think we had a long, healthy discussion on this application. I want to thank Mr. Dunlap and all the speakers, and also the opponents who came out to kind of discuss this application. I think this is one. Well, if we look at the industrial area, 4 Magazine Street, and also connecting it with the CBD, it probably does not necessarily fit as currently. I think the staff has done a tremendous job basically outlining everything for the next steps for this application. And with that, I would like to move this application forward with staff approval.
Motion for approval of staff's recommendation by Commissioner Stewart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lund. Is there any discussion or comments from the commission? If not, Commissioner Weber.
Just one comment. I'm gonna support the recommendation. I would say to the owner on the work for the Good Neighbor Agreement. I think we heard from some neighbors, one specifically, who has been a multi-decade resident, who has done a lot of stabilization and growth work. I would encourage you, because we had this discussion earlier, there are things that are not in the power of this commission that would live in a Good Neighbor Agreement. I think you are going to be part of a change in some of these facilities going from industrial to, should this pass, industrial to entertainment. The way that you conduct yourself and the viability of this business, because I think that's the other concern that the neighborhood has, is the viability of this, that even with the trust of you, what comes next is a point of fear. So I think the viability in your conduct will go a long way towards setting a tone. So I would encourage you to continue to do that work. That today's not a finish line on that, but I am going to support the motion as put forward by Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Brown.
I'm going to support the motion as well, but I concur with Commissioner Weber's thoughts on being good neighbors.
Any further comments?
Just also, I'd like to encourage you to look out additional parking. It's minimum what's required.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Lund. We're good? Before I call the question, this was a lengthy hearing, and I just want to thank everyone for abiding within the time constraints and for engaging so respectfully. With that, I will call the vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed? 6 yeas, no nays, 1 recusal by Commissioner Speed. That motion carries. Thank you so much. Someone please find our chairman. Miss Welcome back, Mr. Chair.
It's on the agenda. It's what happened to it.
want to take us home?
Did I miss anything? Zoning docket 9118.
The next item is zoning docket 9118 for a property located at 4201 Pratt's Road. It is a request for a zoning change from the inline maritime industrial district to an HI heavy industrial district. Conditional use to permit the construction and demolition debris recycling facility in the proposed HI district. The staff finds that the proposed zoning change represents an arbitrary incursion of a more intensive zoning district into a less intensive district. The proposal augments the existing HI district south of the physical barrier of the I-10 bridge in the closer proximity to commercial and residential uses, which is undesirable given the availability of other sites with the HI district zoning. The request is a spot zone, and the zoning change does not correct a problem with the existing zoning. Therefore, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 9118. However, on July 20, the applicant requested a deferral to the August 14 public hearing in order to submit additional materials for staff review.
So we have, the applicants requested a deferral?
Yes, sir.
So we have 2 cards in support, nobody in opposition. So both people speaking, wanting to speak in support would have to consent to the deferral since it's a public hearing and you have the right to speak. But if everybody who's here to speak either for or against 9118 consents to the deferral, then we could move to the motion to defer if someone made one. Yeah, it's not. Right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Martin Landrew. I'm at 201 St. Charles Avenue. I'm the attorney for Bayou Fleet, and we have, with the consent of the staff, asked for the deferral to offer some additional information to them. As I don't know who else is.
Yeah, actually, I misspoke, and the card I was looking at was for the next one. So I think there is no one here to speak for 9118 other than you.
Then if I think we're all in agreement with those in support, seeing as I'm the only one here, and would ask for the deferral.
Right, so there's no need for, we could entertain a motion for deferral. Commissioner, boy, Commissioner Weidberg got in ahead of the wire, Commissioner Hughes seconded. Motion for deferral if there's no discussion.
To the August
14th is what was requested, if that's so.
August 14th.
Yes, sir.
August 14th is my
Right,
motion.
to August 14th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Zoning docket 9218.
Zoning docket 9218 is a request for conditional uses to permit a gas station with the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages in the C1's General Commercial District and the East New Orleans Renaissance Corridor Use Restriction Overlay District and a CT Corridor Transformation Design Overlay District. Petition property is located in Square 1, Lot 1A, Hadel Heights in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Shepton Tour Highway, Ray Avenue, Rain Street, and Ransom Street. The municipal address is 6601 Shepton Tour Highway. Subject site sits on a 14,632 square foot lot and is currently developed with an operating Chevron gas station and a 300 square foot retail kiosk. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the site by demolishing the existing convenience store and replacing it with a 2,200 square foot convenience store that would be located at the northern edge of the site. Based on the initial design review of the proposed structure, the staff found the design to be deficient in terms of not providing the required rear yard setback for commercial property that abuts a residential district and exceeding the maximum front yard setback of 20 feet, and several other requirements of the CZO. While staff sometimes recommends that a design deficiency be addressed as a part of a proviso attached to an approval recommendation, that is normally only done when the needed design change is fairly minor and does not affect the overall building or site. Since a major redesign of the site is required, the staff recommends allowing additional time for the applicant to revise the plans and staff time to review those revised plans. Therefore, staff recommends a deferral of this request until the August 28th City Planning Commission meeting.
We have one speaker in support, James Hadel.
I'm sorry, I'm the wrong call.
No, you're not on 9218. Okay.
Yes, I am. He's opposed.
Oh, you're opposed, I'm sorry. Then we have again, then unless all the speakers agree to the deferral, then we'll go ahead and hold a public hearing. So you look like you're in support.
Yeah.
So come on up and give us your name and address. And so, Mr. Haydel, are you you have the right to speak, or if you agree to the deferral, then we would move to consider a motion for deferral. But you have there's no pressure on that because you have the total right to speak with the public hearing, and you have the right to present. So after the applicant, so are you in favor of a deferral, or would you prefer to speak today?
I'll speak today.
Okay. Sir, the proponents then can proceed. Give us your name and address.
Yes, my name is my address 5201 North Carolina Avenue. I'm one of the members of the Chevron station on 6601 Chevron Highway, and we just trying to develop the properties already existing gas station. And if you have guys any questions for me.
Are there any questions for the speaker? If not, then thank you.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of zoning docket 9218? If there's no one, then Mr. Haydel, you're in to speak in opposition, do I understand? Very good. Give us your address for the record.
My name is James V. Haydel Jr. I live at 4332 Ray Avenue, which is across the street from this station. I was born 6551 Chantilly Highway, Route 9, which the address today is 6551 Shelton Tour. My father and my uncle developed that Hydell Heights, like you say, Hydell Heights is the name of it. And they lost to Gulf built this station at first in the early 70s, or late 60s. And trying this sold it to Chevron. But all that history of that station never sold alcohol. And I'm totally against it because 2 blocks away, Chef and Dale has a history of violence because of alcohol and drugs. They call it the $1 Million Corner. Like 5 years ago, 17 people got shot at that corner because there's nowhere to sit but outside and drink the liquor. And the same thing will happen here. You know, there's no facilities where you can sit inside, but they'll be on the property drinking. I raised 7 kids and I have 16 grandkids that visit me. And they'll be exposed to this ugliness, you know. So if they want to buy liquor, they just have to walk a block away. So I wouldn't want it in your neighborhood, I don't want it in my neighborhood liquor.
Thank you, Mr. Haydel. Any questions of Mr. Haydel? Now, thank you, sir. The applicant,
I have a question.
Mr. Stewart.
So Mr. Haydel, the applicant has requested for a deferral, is that right? So he wants to necessarily come back so that he can present more information to this body. Are you opposed to that? Okay, thank you.
So if there's no one else to speak in opposition, then the speaker who spoke in favor would have an opportunity for deferral, for rebuttal if you wish to say anything further.
No, thank you. Yeah, just if we can defer it to provide more paperwork to us.
Very good. Then that closes the public hearing. Do we have a motion or any comments or a motion from the commission? Commissioner Brown?
28th of August.
Second. 28th. Second.
Move to defer to the 28th of August meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lund? If there's no discussion, we'll call the vote on that question to defer to the August 28th meeting.
I just want to say real quick, Mr. Chairman, I am going to support the motion to defer and just want Mr. Haydel to know if you're unable to return, your comments will be on record at the next meeting.
Okay, I'll call the question on the motion to defer to the August 28th meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. We'll take this matter back up on August 28th.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to state on the record that I'll be out of town on the 28th, so you can allow me to defer to that date. I just wanted to knock it on the record that I'm going to be there.
Thank you for that. Then, we have adoption. Do we have anything other than adoption of the minutes and committee reports?
Yeah, there's
I
a,
didn't,
yeah,
I didn't
there's
see a
select-
subdivision.
Should be on there, should be A under other matters.
Listed up higher on the agenda.
Subdivisions, yeah.
Yeah, ratification of subdivision.
Yeah, that's it, it's
Oh,
the number of subdivisions that we have approved administratively.
So these are, do we take these all at once?
Yeah, just one motion to ratify.
We have, our packets have 15 subdivisions that were, actions that we need to consider ratifying. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Hughes moves, and Commissioner Stewart seconds. All in favor? Aye. No opposed. And all those matters of actions are ratified. Adoption of the minutes of July 10. Mr. Green moves. Mr. Weberg seconds. We'll take that by acclamation unless anybody objects. Are there any committee reports?
No.
In that case, no announcements?